Hello, I'm Michael, the CEO of Folder. In this video, I'm going to introduce more about SnapFusion. SnapFusion is a middleware pipeline building tool that we developed in our company. In part one of this video, um, I have I've run a demo how how to build a pipeline and then how to start from scratch, download SnapFusion and build a pipeline and run it to processing some data. In this part two, I'm going to give a little bit more details about what the pipeline component is and how does it work internally. But before we do that, let's do a little recap about the part one, how what are the snappable components are used in the SnapFusion um, program. So if you remember what we have done in part one is that SnapFusion, you don't have to install anything. You just download from the folder website and then unzip it to a directory, and then in that directory you have a SnapFusion executable. You just launch it. If you run, if you load uh, example solution at the beginning, which is pre-configured. If we look at uh, this solution here, you have three modules: network, filter, and output. So this little pipeline listen to a specific network port. Once it receives some HL7 data, it pass the data to a filter module, which do the filtering, and those messages passes the filter will be passed on to the file out module, which is the writer program writes to the messages into a pre-configured location. In this case, it's called C/temp dash output. So this is how you when you want to start the pipeline, just go start branch. The 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 red dots turn green means the pipeline is working. Uh, at this point, if you send data to here, you'll see the file being writing out to the designated directory. So that's what have been demoed in the part one. Also in part one, I've show you uh, the solution example solutions that in network are actually stacked folders. So in this case, we have uh, we have a network in folder, which is the top folder here. Inside the network in, we have a filter folder, which is the second module here. Then in the filter module, we have the subfolder called file out, which is the third module here. So the pipeline when you built for SnapFusion is simply stacking up all the folders. The file out sits inside the filter sits inside the network in. So you have those folders to the hierarchy of folders forms a data processing pipeline. Basically, that's what it is. And then uh, by just stacking the folder, you can your pipeline just ready to run. So this simple as that. So, and the purpose of this module, this part two of the video is talk about what's inside each of the components. Uh, I guess when you look at the way SnapFusion works, you will be wondering how come a folder can do actually the program works, right? Like filtering, like listening to a port, like listening to a port, like passing the HSM data. How does a folder can do the message pick up each components and examine it and whether it's be filtered or be passed on and how to write the files to a directory. So I guess that's the purpose of this second part of the video to tell you more about these components. So let's look at the example. So when you build those modules, the folders, Those folders actually come pre-built, as part of the download, called snappables. If you look at snappables, you have another folder called snappable pre-configurations, pre-configs, and then here you'll see HL7 handler. So these are the modules that has been used for building our pipeline. So we have the network in folder, which is used to build the first module. So we just stack them up. Uh, we have the second module. So if you want to build a module, as I said, I show you in part one, you just stack the filter into the network in. You have a file out into the filter in, so you can stack. So let's look at the what's actually inside these folders. So if you look at the network in, it's almost empty. Just a very tiny file called folder.config. If you look at this config file, it actually tells us something. So the config file is XML configuration. It has description, talk about okay what this module does. Uh, but the more important part is this line here called handler. So in the handler, it has a pointer to a C# class called folder automation HL7 handler HL7 net receiver, right? And then it tells the next line to it. It says where to find this C# class. In this case, it's called snappable.hl7 handler.dll. So if you look at the snappable folder, go up one level, you'll see that's your HL7 handler. So what really actually going on is that when we run the pipeline, when the SnapFusion look at the first folder here saying, okay, I see a folder has a config file, which it shows here. It says, okay, I'm going to look into the DLL file sitting in here, snappable. So where were we? Snappable dot HL7 handler. Inside this DLL, I'm going to load this class and run it, and I'm going to provide these parameters to this class when I run it. In this particular case, the network listener needs to be told what port it needs to be listened and how long when the network has some issues, what the timeout parameter will be. So this is what the parameter for the first module. Actually, let's look at the second module. In the second module, when you click on the module, it actually automatically shows what's in the config file. So in this case, is look at the class called HL7 filter class. Again, it's in the HL7 handler DLL, but it has its filtering rule saying, okay, the MSH 9.2 has to be A01, A02, A03. So this is the filtering rule. So this second module, which is the filter, HL7 filter, has its own config file which specifies a different class but in the same DLL, and the filtering rules is the only parameter you need for run for its function. Again, the output has its own parameter, and then yeah, it's in the same DLL. So yeah, so basically, uh, that's how SnapFusion works internally. You give it a stack of folder, you just navigate through each of them and look at the config files and load the class, load the DLL, and run it. So that's what it is. So, uh, but what we've seen here is that we have a very flexible architecture. As long as you can give the right parameters to tell SnapFusion what do you want to do, where to find the class, and what parameter you need, and run it. So that's why SnapFusion is so tiny, because all you need is being told what need to be done. But actually, the actual work will be done by the module itself. So let's look at the what else do we have in the modules directory. So in the snappables, we have CSV handler, we have event handler, with trigger handler. So for example, in the CSV record handler, we have a CSV reader, we have CSV writer, we have a database reader, which will read the database table, turn it into the CSV file, and we can database writer, we have a CSV file, can write to a database, and so on. We have a maybe timer, which is, for example, we have a daily timer. Uh, we're gonna not test it, but let's just look at what's in there. So it lets you to set a timer in this particular case 3 times a day, 7 o'clock, 12 o'clock, and 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So yeah, so you can do all sort of things with your DLLs and the pre-configured config files. That's how the structure of uh, the SnapFusion works. So now, why are we doing such way? Because now with such a flexible architecture, potentially you can write your own DLL with your own C# class and do whatever task you want to do. So you don't have to be HL7. You can be HL7, but the way you can do it your own way. Uh, so you can do as I say, as I show you, CSV parsing or timer, um, whatever you want to do. So, so all you need to do is to package your stuff into a DLL, and your config file point to that DLL and the class saying, I want you to run this for me. So now the question is, how would you write your DLL? What are the rules and what are the conventions you need to follow? So that leads to the next topic, is the open API called snappable. That defines what need to be implemented in the DLL, or what the class should be followed in such a way. So let me show you this snappable open API on GitHub. So in GitHub, I have a few, our company have a few projects. One of them is this snappable, which is the software component API. Basically, it allows you to write your own software component. Okay, you uh, feel free to read the introduction, what this API is for. Uh, but I'm trying to show you is that in the source directory, you actually can see those DLLs. Like in this particular case, the HL7 handler project uh, will produce a DLL called HL7 handler DLL, which has logic about the receivers in this case, how receiver runs, filters, and file read, file write, and so on. So this is what this GitHub API is for. It gives you the definition, the framework, what the snappable should be look like. The receiver module is a snappable components. The file filter, the filter module is another snappable components, and so on. And this API tells you what needs to be done to be conform with this. At the same time, uh, another side of the coin is this SnapFusion program itself. Is what has something I call a runtime. The runtime is that it, it, it provides a hosting environment for the components, and then loads it and runs it, right? So I told you that it has ability to look at the DLL, look at the class, and execute the environment. So in this API on the GitHub, it also defines what the runtime is. So what are the things need to be done to be able to interact with those components, or make the components to interact with each other when you have a pipeline that data need to be passed from one processing stage to another one. So, and then yeah, that's it. That's So if you want to write your own DLL, or you are curious about how the HL7 handlers or other DLL works, this is where to look. The GitHub folder snappable repo. You can look at all the things, the logic and the source code in there, right? I just want to show you how it look like when you download the C# program locally. So when you download it, you can load it to Visual Studio environment. In this case, again, these are the HL7 handlers. You can see the receivers. You can make changes if you like, and you can build it. Just rebuild. It will produce another HL7 uh, DLLs. If you made changes, it will be different from the one that's come with default download. But you have the ability to make changes or fix bugs for me if you like, uh, and so on. So you have the flexibility and freedom to build your own components without being restricted by whatever being provided. And another thing I wanted to show you is that we have this SnapFusion uh, runtime environment, which is commercial. We sell it for profit, but you can build actually your own runtime environment. Uh, but really, the runtime environment is that you has the ability to interact with the components or make use of the components that produced by you or even by another developer, right? So for example, in this GitHub repo, you have a maybe should I say a reference runtime implementation called developer kit. If you run it, it's actually have a GUI interface. It allows you to load or unload a component. In this case, you already loaded two components. One is the network receiver, uh, taking in the class HL7's receiver from this DLL. You can start a component like that, right? So you start it, uh, then you start producing log files and so on. So yeah, so this is a reference runtime environment available also on the GitHub repo. So I think that's where's the slides? Sorry. Yeah. So that's the Visual Studio when you look at it. It has these all details in there. And then that's the end of the demo. I hope you have good understanding of how SnapFusion works internally and how the component works between each other, or how you also have the ability to investigate or look at the very details how a component uh, is actually handled, uh, and you can have the ability to build your own components as long as you follow the rules being set by the API. So in the next video, part 3, I'm going to show you how to actually operate the graphical interface of SnapFusion. That's when you have produced some meaningful data pipelines, you want to put into production, what are the things and you need to be noticed? What are the tools and the things you can leverage and use? So that will be the next video. For time being, bye for now. See you next time.